So last time we did the never-ending story. Tonight we do something that's long overdue. The story of an abused teen starlet who appears in a musical that becomes a classic, turns her into a Hollywood icon, influences the gay rights movement. We're talking about, of course, Judy Garland and The Wizard of Oz, the 1939 adaptation of the L. Frank Baum novel. That spun off into a bunch of different ways into the culture, including a creepy sequel with Wizard of Oz, which is Return to Oz. We've seen come into the culture the Wicked musical and the film franchise now. It's influenced The Wiz. It's influenced David Lynch with his Wild at Heart. The cover of ELO's El Dorado is a direct reference to The Wizard of Oz, and of course, it's backmasking on that. Metallica has a song called Frayed Ends of Sanity that starts with that oh we oh yo, which is actually says oh we loathe the old one. There's an urban legend about the film being synced in Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. We're familiar with the idea of Over the Rainbow, of We're Not in Kansas Anymore. We're off to see the wizard. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Following the Yellow Brick Road. Ding dong, the witch is dead. I'll get you, my pretty. The idea of something being behind the curtain. There's no place like home. It's in the culture. It's a classic. It's a Technicolor nightmare of a production.
Yeah.
And we're gonna fucking talk about it. Let's go, RickRamos.
I don't know if there's a singular film more important to the history of cinema than the Wizard of Oz. I mean, and I mean not importance in groundbreaking, although it is groundbreaking, but I'm talking about the influence over a 77-year span now. So much. No, 60, 70, 86, 87 years? Am I right? 87 years? Holy shit, this movie is 87 years old.
39, yeah.
1939. I mean, sometimes I have trouble doing the math. I usually have an easy time doing math, but with something like this, it's such a a slap in the face of the realization of how long this film has existed in the popular culture and the effect and the influence that it has had. Yeah, there is a series of films that have been spun off. Of course, Wicked, Return to Oz, Oz the Great and Powerful. There's been influence like Wild at Heart with David Lynch's film from the 90s. But I think more importantly, it's the subtle influence that it has had in popular culture, whether it be television shows. I mean, within the span of a sitcom, if they do a Halloween episode, they're inevitably going to do a Wizard of Oz reference. Someone's going to dress up like one of the three: Tin Man, Scarecrow, Cowardly Lion, Dorothy, the witch, the Wicked Witch. This is something that is with us, and it's primarily a thing of your and my generation, because, well, mostly mine, but I think you will remember it as well, because this
Every time I have to fucking tell you that we're of the same generation.
No.
Yes, we are. We're Gen X.
Gen X, yeah, but a 5-year difference between the two of us is a considerable difference in the influence. But the thing about it is,
we're talking about generation. So
okay, generations. But I'm talking about the difference in remembering You remember when this film was on VHS. I remember a time when you had to wait. But my point is, I don't know if you remember the time when you had to wait once a year to watch The Wizard of Oz on television, on CBS. Um, it was usually Easter, I believe, and you watched it, and you made time. You knew The Wizard of Oz was going to be playing Sunday. You're going to eat your dinner. You're going to sit in front of the TV, and you're going to watch Dorothy and the three go down the yellow brick road. And it was
that was the time when your year, you had, the year was measured in things that were going to come out on TV.
yeah.
That was like, you would have the fucking I Love Lucy Christmas special.
hmm
You would have the fucking or you would have an I Love Lucy like marathon where it was like 24 hours or whatever the fuck it was. You would have Shaka Zulu would come on every year. The Thornbirds would come on.
hmm
Uh,
King of Kings,
Shogun.
yeah.
Yes. So
But
even
nothing
even in
like The
my
Wizard of
little
Oz.
generation, I remember that.
What was that?
I said even my generation, um, I remember that. Yes.
Hmm.
This was part of the fucking separate from the shit like where they would show syndicated shit on uh in the UHF channels or whatever. Like this was one of those things where it was like you were gonna fucking see it on TV,
hmm
and it was coming. And you knew it.
Yeah, but the difference is that the difference is the time between you had to make the time to watch it when it was on. Otherwise, you missed it. And you missed it, and it was like there was no getting it back. There was no rewind. There was none of that shit. You saw it when it was on, and later on when VHS became a thing, I think they held out for a long time on The Wizard of Oz, and then they finally started, manufacturing that, and you could rent that, you could buy that, and then if you remember back in the day when you would buy, we didn't even buy VHS because a VHS tape cost $100. I remember. You remember I would go to Tower Records, and the film would be sitting on the shelf, and on the spine of it, what we would consider the spine would be the retail cost of the movie, anywhere from $99.99 to $150. And it was so prohibitive because back then they thought, maybe rightfully so, the money was in the rentals. So it was like, get Tower Records to buy it at a lower cost, rent it to people, and then just make your money off of that. The point I'm saying is that when I was young, a kid, you had to wait for it to be on TV. You had to, and you waited with bated breath. This is how important the film was. The We couldn't go see it in a movie theater any longer. You were waiting for it to come out on television. But you were sitting in front of that set and you were captivated by it. And it's such to the point now that I can't even remember when I didn't know this film. I dare anybody out there to tell you, other than people who saw it when it was first released in '39, however many of those people are still alive. Um, let's be honest about that. Um, I dare you to find somebody who can accurately and honestly remember having first seen The Wizard of Oz. And the point is that it's become such a cultural landmark in our lives that
It's always been there.
it's always been there. It's always been with us, whether it's the Tin Man or Ray Bolger as the Scarecrow, or the Scarecrow, or the Cowardly Lion, and obviously Margaret Hamilton as the Wicked Witch of the West, who I don't know if one of us picked her as the greatest villain of all time, and one of us picked Darth Vader.
I don't think it was me because for cinema, I think I picked Darth Vader.
I think I might have picked Margaret. I think I might have picked the Wicked Witch. I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, yeah, she was definitely in there. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, oh, the devil, fucking Darth Vader.
Hmm.
She's iconic.
She is iconic, and she's only on screen for 12 minutes. I mean, I don't know if you realize that. I looked that up, and her screen time is about 12 minutes. She was the Hannibal Lecter of her day, and she really
Right.
did capture something that was almost. I mean, without her, I don't know if this movie works. To tell you the truth, I mean, without her, without Bulger, without Burt Lahr, without
Drugs.
Frank Morgan, without drugs, yeah, and without Judy Garland, I don't know if this film works because, as we're going to talk a little bit about, there are so many aspects to how this film should have fallen apart and should have never been made because there were just constant fucking problems. People almost died making this thing.
Go into that. Go into the backstory and production of the film.
Well, when this film was optioned in 37, it had already been made a couple of times in the silent era. There was at one point where Oliver Hardy had played the Tin Man in an early version. L. Frank Baum, the author of the original novel, had produced something. But this was 1939. This was going to be a Technicolor epic. And Technicolor itself, which is something I only barely understand, but that which I do understand about it means it was an incredibly artistically prohibitive film tool. I mean, it was a giant camera with incredibly hot arc lights, and many of them. You want to talk about bathing people in sun? This is like a sunbath on a stage, and the entire movie there is not a non-artificial shot in the entire movie. Everything is on stage. Everything is matte paintings, which I was surprised to find out matte paintings. We'll go into that later. Remind me of it, please, because I thought it was all like uh, uh, background painting sets when I watched it. But they optioned this. Metro Goldwyn Mayer, MGM at that time, Louis B. Mayer. They wanted to make it. Mervyn Leroy, I think his name was the producer. Some say should have been the director, but at that time it was too big a project to have him handling both production and director duties. So they hired a guy named Richard Thorpe. I think his name was either Richard Thorpe or Ronald Thorpe. He shot for 12 days with a blonde, long-haired Judy Garland, a much different Scarecrow, and Buddy Ebsen as the Tin Man. Well, Buddy Ebsen
Buddy Ebsen from Beverly, who would go on to be in Beverly Hillbillies.
go on to be Beverly Hillbillies and the old Barnaby Jones detective series.
Right.
So he became the makeup that they used for each of the characters, and in particular the Tin Man. It was a kind of silver dust that they painted him with. Well, that shit, he breathed that in over a 12-day period and effectively coated his lungs with silver paint, giving him almost instantaneous emphysema at that time, or something that was comparable. So he would talk about he would breathe and you can't breathe. They ended up taking him to the hospital. Um, he ended up having to withdraw from the picture, being laid up for I think something like 6 weeks, something like that. He was in the hospital, and that was after he had shot. They had shot the escape from the witch's lair. They had shot a couple of other scenes, and 12 days of shooting. 12 days is almost half of your average production, and there was that problem. Jack Haley was brought in at the last minute for the role. But in the time that Buddy Ebsen was taken off this show in order to recuperate, to basically, to save his life, Mayer and Mervyn Leroy, the producer, decided that they hated the rushes. They hated what Thorpe was doing with the film, so they fired him, hired a man named George Cukor, who was like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound, on a chest wound, because George Cukor came in, and an excellent director did a great deal of shooting on the film. Was it George Cukor? Yeah, George Cukor. He shot for a short while, but he was ultimately going to have to leave because they were prepping Gone with the Wind, the other great film of 1939. Although, watch it now, and at some point we're going to have to talk about that fucking movie.
I mean, we
Which,
talked about it in
yeah,
we talked about it in terms of the films that defined an era, perhaps, or
we did.
we talked about how over fucking rated it is, basically.
Yes, yes. It's. I mean, it's
And
a.
of course, the racist elements.
But it's overrated in the. It's overrated. Well, no, we'll talk about that later. Much of the problem of that film is obvious is an obvious parallel to D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. We'll talk about
Yeah.
that at some point as well. Although there are elements of it that are even worse. What was that?
We've done that as well.
We have done that as well. That as well. So this film gets George Cukor. He shoots for a few weeks, then has to leave in order to do Gone with the Wind. But the footage that they got was fantastic, and George Cukor was a great director. He had done The Women. He had done. He would go on to do Gone with the Wind. He would do another. He was one of the great directors of the 1930s, 1940s. So losing him was a major problem for the production of this film. They found Victor Fleming. Victor Fleming was considered a kind of a force of nature when it came to film production. He was the kind of director that got pulled in on problematic films, but was able to right the boat in many cases. And in this case, he did so until he was pulled from the picture to finish Gone with the Wind. Cukor fell out of that for some reason. Victor Fleming had to go in and shoot that. That's when they brought in King Vidor, who, great name for a director.